Today we are going to dig into a really fascinating and honestly a kind of counterintuitive idea from the world of Jungian psychology. It's a concept that pretty much flips the script on everything we're taught about how to love and care for other people. So let's just get right to it. The core idea, coming from a Jungian perspective, is incredibly simple and direct. Don't think too much about anyone. And that means anyone, not your partner, not your ex, not your friends, not the person who you feel wronged you, no one. I know, right? Your first reaction is probably, whoa, that sounds incredibly cold, maybe even selfish. We're all taught that thinking about someone constantly is a sign of how much we care. But what if all that mental energy isn't connection at all? What if it's actually a trap? And that leads us right into our first big idea here, the trap of projection. This is the psychological mechanism that Jung believed is what's really going on when we find ourselves obsessively thinking about another person.
So, what is projection, really? Well, it's when we take all our own internal stuff, our hopes, our fears, even the parts of ourselves we don't like to admit are there, and we unconsciously just stick it onto someone else. We then end up reacting to that, our own projection, not the actual real person standing in front of us.
Let this one sink in for a second. That person you're replaying conversations with in your head, the one you're trying to figure out at 3 in the morning, that isn't actually them. It's a mental construction. It's a character you've built in a story that's probably way more about you than it is about them. And living inside that story, that fantasy, has some really serious consequences. You're basically outsourcing all your mental and emotional energy. It is so depleting. You lose touch with who you are, and you give away all your power, making your own peace of mind totally dependent on a story you can't even control. Jung actually had a very specific, kind of cool term for this deep level of enmeshment. He called it participation mystique. It's this state where you become so psychologically merged with someone else that the boundaries just dissolve. You literally can't tell where you end and they begin. And let's be clear, that's not connection, that's a loss of self. Okay, so if that's the trap, how in the world do we get out of it? Well, that brings us to our second section, the path to individuation. And this comparison here, I think, lays it out perfectly. The goal is to move away from enmeshment, where you're losing your boundaries and living from the outside in, always reacting, and move toward differentiation. That's the healthy goal. It's where two whole, separate people, each with their own strong center, can actually meet and connect authentically. And this whole journey is what Jung called individuation. It's really the core of his work. It's the process of becoming who you truly are, separate from all the roles you play, separate from what others expect or project onto you. It's all about finding and building up your own internal core. So here's the absolute key takeaway. All of that mental horsepower you're using to analyze someone else, to figure them out, it needs to be brought back home. The real work isn't about solving the puzzle of them. It's about redirecting all of that intense focus inward to finally discover yourself. Okay, so that all sounds pretty great in theory, doesn't it? But how do we actually do it? What does this look like in real life? That brings us to section 3, a practice for freedom. First things first, we have to get really clear on the difference between two kinds of thinking. Most of that obsessive thought is what we can call destructive rumination. You know it. It's that anxious loop, like a hamster wheel in your brain that just goes and goes and goes and never gets anywhere. It's not useful. Productive thinking, on the other hand, actually has a point. It solves a problem, it leads to a decision or an action. So here it is, the practice itself. It's incredibly simple, but don't let that fool you. It's powerful. Step 1, just notice. Become aware the moment your mind has drifted off to that person. Step 2, acknowledge it, gently with no judgment. Just a simple, there I go again. And then step 3, consciously redirect your focus. Bring it all the way back to you, to your own breath, to the feeling of your feet on the floor, right here in this present moment. And this simple act of noticing and redirecting, it might seem small, but it is everything. Because as Jung taught, consciousness itself, just the simple act of becoming aware of our unconscious patterns, that is the very first and most crucial step toward becoming free from them. Now, we get to the big payoff. Because doing all this inner work has a really surprising and frankly amazing effect on our relationships. And that brings us to our final section, the paradox of connection.
So here's the first half of the paradox. When you intentionally practice pulling back that obsessive, anxious, ruminating energy from other people, the better your actual relationships become. I know, it sounds totally backwards, right? It's this incredible idea that by focusing less on them in your head, you end up connecting more deeply and genuinely in reality. But why on earth does that work? Well, it's because you start to show up as a different person. You're actually present with them, right here, right now. You start to see them for who they really are, not just your projection of them. You start relating from a place of wholeness, not neediness. You're able to offer mature love instead of anxious dependence. And all of that is what finally creates the space for a real, genuine connection to grow. Ultimately, what this all boils down to is a trade. You're trading a false sense of security, which is trying to control others through obsessive thought, for a true one. Because real, lasting security is always internal. It comes from trusting yourself to handle whatever comes your way, because you've finally built a strong relationship with you. So I want to leave you with this final question to think about. If you could reclaim even just a little bit of the mental energy you spend thinking about other people and reinvest it back into yourself, what would change for you? What kind of freedom is just waiting for you on the other side of this practice?